Raise your hand if you, your mom, or your cool aunt had a Coach bag from an outlet in the early 2000s. You know the one. The big C logos plastered everywhere like wallpaper. At the time, it was the thing. And then, almost overnight, Coach became the butt of every fashion joke. Fast forward to 2024 and plot twist, Coach is suddenly back in the top 5 hottest brands worldwide. Sales are up, Gen Z is obsessed, and people are calling the Tabby their first luxury bag. So what on earth happened? Let's go on a little time travel adventure. Here's what we're gonna cover today, friends. The scrappy New York beginnings that somehow involves baseball gloves. Yeah, don't worry, I'll explain. The chaotic outlet years that nearly killed the brand. I think we're all familiar with that one. The entire Tabby strategy that catapulted Coach back into the spotlight, and how Coach is now setting itself up to outlive the current quiet luxury trends. If you don't know me, my name is Olga and I've been studying brands, craftsmanship, and quality for almost a decade, and now I'm here to help you build the high quality wardrobe of your dreams. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an upload. All right, so picture this. It's New York, 1941, 6 leather craftsmen working out of a loft in Manhattan. No glossy campaigns, no influencer seating, just men who were very, very into leather. A few years later, a husband and wife team joins the mix, which were Miles and Lillian Kahn. Miles was obsessed with baseball gloves. He noticed how they started stiff but softened and got more beautiful the more you used them. So he asked, what if handbags could age like that too? He came up with a tanning process that made leather soft, strong, and full of rich color. And then we have Lillian, who looked around and basically said, wallets are cute, but handbags make money. Her first big hit was a leather tote modeled after the paper shopping bags she used as a kid while delivering Chinese noodles for her parents' restaurant. I love that. Your first luxury design idea inspired by a paper bag. Fast forward to 1962, and that is when Coach hired Bonnie Cashin. She was the it girl designer of the time. She was credited with inventing the American sportswear look. She was all about functional chic. Think the athleisure of the time, so clothes you can actually move in but still looked fabulous. For Coach, she added wild pops of color, outside pockets, even accessories like coin purses and glasses cases, but her biggest flex was the turn lock clasp that we know today. She literally got the idea from the lock of her convertible car roof. And then that tiny piece of brass hardware became the Coach signature. Bonnie was also a little bit cheeky. She suggested that women should carry 2 bags, a big work bag and a smaller one for, you know, evening activities, whether that's dinner, drinks, or something a little bit spicier. She was ahead of her time after all. And then in 1985, Coach gets scooped up by, wait for it, Sara Lee. Yeah, that same Sara Lee that makes cheesecakes. Imagine buying a pie and a purse in the same cart. Under Sara Lee, Coach exploded in size. They licensed everything: watches, furniture collabs, even Motorola phone cases. It's the era of slap the logo on anything and call it luxury. Sound familiar? And honestly, it did work for a while though. And then the 90s era of Coach gets Reed Krakoff, and he turns Coach into a billion-dollar beast. His big move was the signature C canvas. Right when Logomania hit in like the early 2000s, suddenly you couldn't walk through a mall without seeing those C's on every single shoulder. Celebrities wore them, girls begged their parents for them, and for a hot minute, Coach was it. But then, as always, oversaturation hit. Coach bags were in every department store, every outlet, and eventually on every clearance rack. The brand that once felt aspirational became a punchline. You wanted to look luxury, you didn't buy Coach, you skipped it for Louis Vuitton or even Michael Kors, which we will get to in another video. And then by 2013, Coach desperately needed a reset, which is when Stuart Vevers entered. He came from Loewe and Mulberry, and he knew luxury leather. So the first thing he did was go back to the archives. He reworked the saddlebag, the tote, the classic shapes, but fresher, more modern, and he also had some fun. Remember those Rexy the dinosaur keychains? Yeah, he made Coach playful again. Around this time, Coach even rebranded as Tapestry, so they bought Stuart Weitzman and Kate Spade to build an even bigger fashion group, which then led to Todd Kahn becoming the CEO. So he talked about running Coach like basketball, like the basketball triangle offense. So business on one side, design on the other, storytelling on the third, and then the consumer was right in the middle. So forget about competing with Hermes for millennials. Coach doubled down on being the first designer bag for 20-somethings, which is when we get the Tabby. So it was released in 2019, and this is the sleek shoulder bag with the C clasp. You know the one, cute, retro, practical, and most importantly, anywhere from $350 to only $500. So affordable enough to feel reachable, but fancy enough to feel like a little bit of a splurge. And then the real gem came in 2021, which was the Pillow Tabby. Squishy, pillowy, perfect for those Instagram flat lays, which is when Coach dropped the In My Tabby campaign with Lil Nas X and Jennifer Lopez, and suddenly the Tabby tabby is everywhere. You know that era. You remember that era. We love that era. I was personally obsessed with the Coach pillow tabby a few years ago. It wasn't just a bag. It was like a starter luxury moment. So it was Gen Z's version of I did it. I bought my first designer bag. TikTok was like all over it back then, if you remember. But then Coach didn't actually stop at the hype. They doubled down on sustainability, partly because they had to. Do you remember that scandal when someone discovered Coach was slashing and dumping unsold bags? Yeah, that was not a good look for them. So in order to turn it around, they launched the Reloved program, which is when you could bring in your old bag, they refurbish it, resell it, or recycle it. And then in 2023, they actually launched Coachtopia, which is the Gen Z sub-brand using recycled materials and giving every bag like a digital passport so you could actually track where it came from. It was smart, responsible, and honestly, it made the brand feel a little bit fresher. Although I'm not a biggest fan of the Coachtopia quality, it was a really good move for the brand. Some other honorable mentions is we have the Brooklyn toe. It was big, slouchy, and there are no logos, so perfect for that quiet luxury moment that we had a couple of years ago. Bella Hadid carried one, TikTok did its thing, and suddenly it was the cool girl work bag, and it still is arguably. The Coach Brooklyn is still a very popular style from them. And then you get the younger crowd, you have bag charms, little dinos, cherries, plush toys, you name it. It's genius. It fell right before the Labubu craze, so you know we all get hooked with a $50 charm, and that became the aspirational gateway into buying the $400 tabby. So the numbers do not lie. So Coach jumped 10 spots into the global top 5 on lists. They added 6.5 million new North American customers in 2024, and most of them were Gen Z and millennials. So we are back on the Coach train just like we were on in the early 2000s, and now their annual sales have spiked to over $5 billion. That is crazy. That is one of the biggest comebacks from like an early 2000s brands I've ever seen. Coach has nailed that kind of sweet spot between like quality leather, fun designs, and prices that do not require skipping your rent payment. And the Coach Empire and the Brooklyn are currently some of my favorites from the brand. I think they're really great silhouettes. They're not overhyped. They don't have those really loud logos, which I absolutely cannot stand, which is why I will never be the sea canvas kind of gal. So yeah, Coach basically went from your like mom's outlet bag to Gen Z's first luxury bag. And honestly, in my opinion, they totally earned it. What about you? Let me know if you own any Coach bags that you love. Have you forgiven the brand for its outlet era craze? Or are you still scarred by all of those clearance racks flashbacks? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love reading all of your stories. And if you want me to do a deep dive on vintage Coach leathers and how to spot the good ones, let me know. I can do that in a future video. And subscribe if you haven't already, because next week we're talking about how to tell if a Coach bag is an outlet version or the real high quality retail baby. Bye friends, until next time.